Patrick Earl, Economic Development Officer for Wheatland County. And today on WC Conversations Live we're having a conversation with Tam Andersen, owner of Prairie Gardens, north of Edmonton, near the town of Donaghmore, 20 minutes north of the city of Edmonton. And with that, welcome, Tam.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you, Patrick.
You too. It's been a while. I have to get up and visit again. But yeah, so Tam, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your farm?
I would love to. Prairie Gardens, an adventure farm, has been my baby for quite a few years now. It started off back in 1956 as a tree nursery, and it was initially serving the landscape industry. At one time, we grew 100,000 geraniums and sold them all to the landscapers. And that was the plant of choice back in the early days. Nowadays, things have changed quite a bit, and our business reflects, I think, all of the different changes and what customers and people are looking for generally. So we've moved from selling geraniums to still operating a garden center. This year, because of, I think, a COVID response, we're selling fruit trees as a niche, and there's such a huge demand for fruit trees that we're just almost overwhelmed with the interest. We also reflected the changing ways with developing agritourism as one of our income streams. And we started off simply enough by having a U-pick strawberry field, and people would come to the farm and say, "This is wonderful. What else can we do here?" And I would smile and nod, as most entrepreneurs do, and say, "What would you like to do?" So that's evolved in a big way for us. Agritourism before COVID was at least 80% of our revenue, and the garden center slipped down to the 20% rule. The 80-20 rule always seems to play no matter what you're doing. So now the garden center is back up at 80% and the agritourism is at 20%. But that will change rather rapidly, I think, once the COVID pandemic starts to stream out a bit and people find that they've got their vaccinations in place. We, besides offering U-pick strawberries, at one point decided to have U-pick pumpkins as well. I'd been off to a conference in the US and it was like, okay, we're going to grow pumpkins. And I called my dad up, who lives in southern Alberta down by Rolling Hills. And I said, "Dad, I want to grow pumpkins. How can I do that up at Edmonton, or north of the 56th parallel up here?" And he said, "Tam, you're out of your gourd. You can't grow pumpkins that far north." So gauntlet throwing, I decided that we would grow pumpkins, and we start them in our greenhouses and transplant them out. We now plant about 15 acres of pumpkins, and U-pick pumpkins is really big in the COVID pandemic. People just want to be outside with their families, and so we're planting even more this year. And we have a huge area for parking for them, and then other activities. So there'll be mazes, sunflower mazes, corn mazes, bale mazes. We're developing a forest that we have next to our big U-pick gardens, so there can be trails through the forest, and we're calling it Rhythm in Nature, so people can listen to the sounds and get back in tune with the land. And that nature deficit disorder thing is a real thing now that people have been cooped up in their homes for so long. Besides that, we also work with chefs and have developed a chefs collaborative on the farm. And we work with half a dozen chefs that we deliver to every week in the back doors for their restaurants, which has also been impacted with COVID. However, they are now coming out to the farm because there's a huge opportunity to do dinners and chef's dinners and pop-ups with them right here at the farm. And that's really exciting and really fun to do. So we'll explore that through this season, and actually got a grant from Western Diversification to develop an outdoor kitchen and seating area. So that's going to be our new endeavor through this summer as we move forward.
That's awesome. So Tam, can you describe a little bit how you've really pivoted and I know pivot's one of those catchphrases that I hope goes away, but can you talk about how you've been able to adapt in the COVID, in the pandemic season, I guess? Because I know that with all your operations, it's a lot of, I mean, you see a lot of people, and so all of your programming, all your products, it revolves around people visiting you. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, with the onset of the COVID, we saw our numbers drop from, having weddings booked and having corporate family picnics to basically having nothing at all, and everything got canceled within a week. And that was really a crunch time and a moment of reconsideration, I think, as to what we would do in the future. What we have found is we worked with Travel Alberta, actually, and Edmonton Tourism, and they've been so helpful. We were able to hire a consultant to actually help us work through the COVID protocols and what we should be doing for people when they were at the farm. And also the Alberta Farm Fresh Producers Association really stepped up at that time and came up with a good set of guidelines. And now that we know more, it's easier to make sure that we're following all those guidelines. And so, simple things like making sure all of our staff are aware that of all the protocols, and making sure that they are wearing masks and not coming if they're not feeling well to work, and making sure that everything is sanitized. We completely redesigned the traffic flow at the garden center this time of year so that it's one way and they have access to only 2 greenhouses, and it's something where we've really moved things outdoors so that people can be outdoors and far away from each other. So as I walk through and I start planning out experiences on the agritourism side, I imagine myself with a hula hoop attached to my my head. It was like the 6 feet gap in every location, and the one way, so that people don't have to bump into each other coming in and out of places. Has been a real moment where we had to rethink how people access places and how they get in and get out. And the timed entry, as far as them coming to the farm and booking an admission, has been just a godsend. I don't know why we never thought of that before. But now people can buy tickets online in advance, and there are a certain amount of tickets available at each time slot, and every hour that changes. And once they're on the farm, it's easy enough to spread out because we do have about 40 acres that they're working on. But when they arrive, that's the pinch point. So if we can spread that out and make sure that people can come slowly and surely, it's much, much better for us and for them too. So those have been a couple pivots. In terms of what we're offering, we started offering farm picnics. And because we're working with chefs, this year we've offered 2 sets of picnics. One is the vegetarian farm to fork picnic, because we're a vegetable farm, and why would we not offer vegetables, the things that we grow, very authentic to the farm. And we added a gourmet high tea picnic, and we priced them quite well. We priced them at $75 and $125 for the gourmet picnic. It has been definitely a thing that we're looking forward to for this next weekend for Mother's Day. And at the same time that the news is carrying stories of the 3rd wave, and everybody got an emergency alert on their phone, and there's now curfews at 8 o'clock in the evenings in Edmonton, so and Strathcona County and areas. So people are very, very wary and concerned about making sure that they're doing things safely. And the picnics are the perfect thing because they can book a private family bubble, and we will make sure that you get to your private spot. And then we're going to give a private farm tour after that. So everything has become very much family focused and smaller. So we're not expecting crowds of 5,000. We're very happy if we have 50 people, but we've raised the price to account for that. So we've changed our modeling from high volume, low return to low volume, high return.
Sounds great. And so another one of your bigger products that I remember is I think every person who went to a public or Catholic school in the city of Edmonton growing up has visited your farm on a field trip. What did you have field trips last year, and are you anticipating anything this year? And have you been able to do anything with that?
Actually, we have not had a school field trip on the farm at all last year. This year, we're starting to see interest in people bringing out of school care programs. And it's a difficult thing to work through because at the same time, we have a limit of 10 people as a group. And honestly, although we love to do tours, I don't think it makes financial sense for us to do a group of 10 people with all of the protocols in place. So it's not something we've been advertising or trying to encourage at this point, but it'll come back as soon as things lift. And we've done some quite a lot actually of video presentations, and that seems to be popular. But just focusing on the small groups and the families is our priority at this time.
And were you able to do any of the corn maze product that, like, because you can do spacing, so did that go last year?
Yes, we did. We planted corn mazes and sunflower mazes. They turned themselves into labyrinths, which is basically a maze that goes one way. So
Right.
there's no return trip. You can enter, but you can never leave. But yes, and the sunflower mazes were lovely, and we've timed them to bloom at the beginning of our fall season, which is a real drawing card for a completely different market than we're used to. We're quite happy having families and children. And the sunflower mazes brought the Instagrammers out. And so we suddenly had the 20 somethings all dressed beautifully for their lovely photos in the sunflower maze. And that really was a shift in market for us because that's an adult market, and the picnics worked well for that adult market. And I think that's now I look at the farm with a whole new Instagrammer eye, and I'm working on the photo ops as we develop through the season.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have some experience with the Sunflower Festival in the Fraser Valley and same exact demographic of people. So that's awesome. Um, so, can you tell us a little bit more about your partnering with other businesses in Sturgeon County and the region there, and how you've been able to sort of layer and develop new product with partners?
What we find is that one farm alone does not a tourist attraction make. And this started back in the early days with something that we called the Country Soul Stroll. And it was something there we collaborated with about 15 or 20 different farms and developed a driving tour. And that was really popular and I think really important for people because even the locals like to go out and see different things. And even though they may want to go to a corn maze, they would also like to visit a pottery studio, or they would like to see an artist, or they would like to find some local food along their travels, and or any kind of horse riding operations or animals of any kind. People are just so thrilled to go visit. So if we can connect the dots and make it so that they have many places to see, it just makes it a much better experience and much more likely that it's that tipping point of to choose whether to go or to stay home. It's like, oh well, if we do this and we do that, it'll be a wonderful adventure for the kids and for the families. So we started with the Country Soul Stroll, and then that just kind of morphed into working directly with partners. For us, it was a lot of work to put together a big driving tour. And I think that's a real opportunity for people. And we're starting to see that evolve naturally with food tours and that sort of thing, where there's an operator that will actually put together the tour and then you're just part of it. Now we work a lot with the restaurants and the chefs and offer all kinds of different experiences. So currently we're working with Catherine Joel from Get Cooking Canada, and she evolved her business from a cooking class in person to a virtual cooking class business. And now she is marketing her cooking classes across North America. And she is going to be coming to the farm and actually offering the classes in person at the farm with a virtual element, so that people can also tune in North Carolina and Antarctic and wherever they're out there, which is a great way to introduce our farm and our products and our vegetables and what grows in the north to people who are really interested. And she finds that she has a lot of people signing up from the southern states because they're very intrigued by what us folks in the north might consider delicacies. And that's been amazing. So we'll continue with that partnership. And also we work with a fermenter, a chef that's really keen on making preserves and all of that sort of thing. So we'll offer workshops on fermentation, which is really hot right now. We have another set of chefs that are really interested in cooking over the fire and using fire in their processes, and they will come out and do pop-up dinners. And we actually worked together and built a wood-fired brick oven, so that we have that and a number of other cooking with fire facilities now, so that people can enjoy that experience, and the chefs can play. Really, they're just having so much fun, and they're always amazed at how things taste when they're right from the farm. Their eyes light up, and they're in terms of chef worlds, this is like it used to be in the old country, right? And you get the tomatoes taste like tomatoes, and what, you grow figs in your greenhouse? This is amazing. So if you can identify a niche of some sort and make it your own, the collaborations just kind of come naturally, and we're always very open-minded about it. And as long as it seems like it's a fair trade in what we're doing, we'll always embrace collaborations as part of our business model.
Excellent. And so, going off of the the vegetables and the menus and stuff like that, can you tell us, are you still working on your CSA program?
Yeah, we do work with CSA, so Community Supported Agriculture is that program. And this is where folks buy a share of the harvest at the beginning of the season to support the farm, and also eat healthier all summer long by having fresh in-season produce. The amazing thing about CSAs is that it builds community, and people love that opportunity to have their own flock, as it were, that they, something that they belong to and that they feel is helping change the world for a better place. And when they can contribute directly to supporting a local farm, they feel that that's taking place, and that they're addressing climate change. The food is amazing always because it's so fresh. You just can't go wrong. And they're learning about using different kinds of produce. So we found that we can actually grow Asian vegetables really well up in the north, because it's cool here in the evenings. And things like bok choys and tatsoys and kamatsunas and whatnots are all part of our weekly offering. And they're like, well, what is this? And how do we cook with it? And so just they embrace, I think, trying new things. The beautiful thing for us is that we are able to plan our gardens based on how much we think we'll need every week. And that group of people, if it's 50 families coming every week, means that we can now operate a farm market and have turnover with our produce in a good way, so that everything is fresh and wonderful always. And those folks also support the farm in many ways, in that they become mavens, and they love the farm, they love the farmers, and their kids grow up on the farm, and they all call me Farmer Tam when they come, and they will of course bring their kids back. And then I start to feel old when I say that, but so often we find that young people come back because they came when they were kids, and now they're parents and they're bringing their kids back. So it's a great way to live the full circle of a food shed in your community.
Excellent. And so You've worked with a number of organizations that assist in marketing and supporting your ideas and innovations on agritourism. But we know that there's a little bit of shift that's happening with the provincial government with Travel Alberta, and I would assume you're probably at the very tip of that spear on what's coming, what's changing. Do you see as a ag tourism business, do you see um, there's new opportunities with Travel Alberta and other organizations like that to help you out and work with you and your partners?
Yes, absolutely. There's never been a better time, and this is really the front of the wave because people want agritourism experiences. They want to be out on farms. They want meaningful experiences, genuine, authentic, one-of-a-kind experiences where they get to talk to you as a farmer, find out what exactly is going on at the farm, learn something, take something home with them that's wonderful. And I think Travel Alberta has recognized that in Alberta, we farm better than almost anywhere else in the world in all kinds of different levels. And they've been really supportive, as has Edmonton Tourism, in product development. And so if you have an idea and you're not quite sure, where to go with it and how to make it an experience, they're so brilliant at helping put that together. And we've worked with a number of different consultants now in experience development and experiential tourism. And once you get your head into that space, it's a shift in how you think, and it's a shift in how you value what you offer on your farm. And even though you may not appreciate it because it's your backyard and you do it every day, somebody else in the world will find it absolutely magical if you put it together properly and work out all the details. So we actually worked a lot in a program called Shift through Travel Alberta and Edmonton Tourism, which was to take, again, that approach of high return, low volume, and design experiences for 12 people or 6 people rather than 600 people. And it's much more sustainable over time to do those sorts of programs because your impact in your community is a very healthy one, with regenerative tourism as the base of what you're doing. So from that perspective, I think there's never been a better time to go and approach Travel Alberta and find your regional rep and talk to them about what you're thinking about, and they'll help you out. A great way to dip your toe in the water is open farm days, and certainly taken off across the province, particularly down in your area. I think, Patrick, it has been really well received, and it's an opportunity to open your gates for just a weekend or one day and just experience yourself what it's like to have people come to you and learn about what's your passion and how you share that passion with them.
Excellent. So I have one more question for you, then we'll open it up to the people on the call here. But yeah, you hinted on it on your last answer, but for Wheatland County, being similar to proximity to a large metro region like you are to Edmonton and us to Calgary, what do you see as potentially a great, what do you see for opportunity potential with Wheatland County to Calgary?
You've got beautiful wide open spaces and an agricultural patchwork of so many diverse experiences and wonderful value adding opportunities as well. We're seeing in this area distilleries and breweries popping up in every corner. And of course, you are the heart of growing the world's best grains. And I think, people are very interested to know, how does beer work and how does it happen, and to learn that it's a farm product and barley is, not just barley, but it's a malt barley, and the whole thing is just fascinating to people. And I think what we see especially in other counties across the country, for example, in the Kelowna area or in Prince Edward County in Ontario, is that the wine industry has really driven tourism in a big way, and people will come out and go and taste and try things. And we do that so well, not wine, but gin and beer and whiskey. And I think, if not to say that that's the only experience, but that sort of gets people thinking differently. That's like, it makes it approachable. They are sufficiently disconnected, I think, from a rural experience when they live in urban areas, that they just don't know where to start. They want to find a local farm but don't know how to do it. They used to have grandma and grandpa's place, the last generation, where they could pop out for the summer and go visit and see the chickens laying eggs and the calves and the lambs and all those sorts of things. But those avenues have dried up, and they can't do that anymore. And we find, particularly during COVID, that the Sunday drive is a thing. People will get in their cars and just go. And people go all the way from Calgary to us looking for something to do for the day. And the drive is just part of the day. And I think that's really expanded the envelope as to how far people will travel and what they'll do on their travels. And so long as there's lots of food involved, so people like to eat 7 times a day when they're on the move and traveling. Maybe not a lot at every time, but they want to taste, and they want to, take home that jar of honey and taste the honey, or they want to take home preserves, or they want to take home some cheese, or, edible flowers, or bunches of herbs, or bunches of sunflowers, anything. Like, they want to get their hands in it. They want to experience it and immerse themselves in it. And I think you can offer that so beautifully down where you are in your region.
Excellent. Yes, I totally agree with you. So let's open it up to everybody on the call. Does anybody out there have any questions for Tam?
Hi, Tam. This is Kristen. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for the town of Strathmore. I've been through the SHIFT program through the Sylvan Lake municipality, and it was an excellent program, so congratulations going through that. I have a question on this. I believe it's called the CSA program. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
The CSA program, the Community Supported Agriculture Program, is that what you're wondering?
Yes, please. And it just sparked my interest just to understand more of the background, and you gave a bit of information, but I just wanted to know if there's anything else you wanted to provide with that.
It's a wonderful way for farms to connect directly to the consumer. The consumer does pay a share or buy a share of the harvest of whatever it is that you're doing at the beginning of the season. In our case, it's vegetables, but there's all kinds of shares. It could be an egg share, it could be a protein or beef share, it could be cheese or butter. All of those sorts of things people are looking for in terms of a share. And we have, in our case, evolved that program from just a summer program. So we offer 17 weeks where a family will get a basket of produce from the farm every week, and they would come either to the farm or to a distribution point to pick it up. And we have one distribution point in Edmonton. So in the case of Strathmore, it'd be lovely to have a distribution point right downtown or at your farmer's market, I would assume you have. And they would essentially help build a local food shed in your community by supporting local farms within your area. And we have now offered a fall share and also a deep winter share. So we offer year-round food from the farm, and it changes through the season. And people, I think, are very surprised at how much diversity that Alberta farms can offer. My daughter has started a chicken and egg laying operation as a result of our CSA program, and everybody wants a dozen or 2 eggs and vegetables, and are also interested in baking. Could we connect them with a local cheesery? And those sorts of connections are super part of a CSA. There's an element of shared risk in a CSA that's kind of unique to the program, in that because people buy their share at the beginning of the season, just like we as farmers plant our seeds, nobody quite knows what's going to be the winner of the season and which ones are going to be the challenges. And so if there were a hailstorm, for example, come through, then that could be a risk that is shared equally between the farmer and the consumer. So a pretty unique opportunity to really delve into it. As a farmer, it's super stressful if you are having a bad weather year. And we have learned that the greenhouses are a really important part of our operations because we can move inside and grow heirloom tomatoes and greens and all sorts of things, even if we're having a drought, for example, which it's lining up to be a dry spring already. Or in the case of last year, it was too wet and it rained and rained and rained and rained. And so we kept planting lettuce and we had lots of lettuce through the season. But, the things that love the heat didn't do so well. And that's just part of the program. And as long as you have adequate supplies and are able to at least provide value for your shares, I think that's wonderful. We have evolved our CSA this year a little more into offering more choice. In the past, in many CSAs will offer only what the farmer wants to put in the basket. And we realize that people really want to have some choices. And so we're doing a base of a $15 value of whatever vegetables we feel that we need to put in their baskets because they're ready now. And then at our farm market, we're allowing them to choose the rest of their basket items from the market so that they can pick what they like. So if they happen to be super keen on carrots, they can have 3 bunches of carrots that week instead of our 1 bunch. And I think every one of our CSA members is really quite thrilled with that aspect of our CSA this season.
Tam, thank you so much. Patrick or Tam, do you have any further information that we could read up on the program?
There's certainly information within Alberta Agriculture and their Agripreneur division, and they've done a number of studies on CSAs in Alberta, looking at the profitability, the numbers that you need to maintain it, and what models work the best. And those are surveys and studies that I think are available online if you just search CSA Alberta. There's also an organization or two that support CSAs out in the province, and so you can just Google is a wonderful tool that way.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks.
Tam, it's Rosemary here. I was wondering how you sell tickets online. Do you use a platform or just get names and numbers and call them back?
We've done all of those things. When we first started strawberries about 25 years ago, we used to do it 100% on an appointment system, and we would work out how many berries a week we would think we would have ripe, and then we would take people's names on a waiting list and just phone them back when we had the berries and say, this is your week, are you able to come on a Saturday or a Wednesday? From there, we kind of evolved into using a couple of different platforms. We started out in the spring with a free online program called Simply Schedule, which is a program that just allowed people to book a time without having to buy a ticket per se. And that worked really well. It's a bit glitchy on the cancellations. So if they made an appointment and changed an appointment, that was a lot of emails back and forth. But it was nice that we didn't have to actually man the phones and physically book people in. And that worked really well for that sort of operation. You can set it up on timed entry so that people could book an appointment every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes. And you could set the limit on how many appointments could be booked at that time frame. So if you think you can deal with 5 people at a time, then you can set it so that you have 5 people at a time coming at 10 and 5 people coming at 10:15 and so on. We've now moved on to something called WooCommerce. And the jury is a bit out on this, but we're able to book tickets where they are purchasing tickets. and it has a schedule built into it, so they can, it's a lot of work on the back end because you have to define all of the different aspects of what you're going to allow or not allow at that time frame, and how much are the tickets. We wanted to make sure that they could add on items, so if they book a ticket to come to the farm for the day, they could also book a private family animal tour, for example, or they could also book a gem mine experience or a train ride, and those sorts of things make it a little more complicated. But so far, it's a fairly good program. We've been working with a website developer because it's beyond my capacity as a web designer to figure all that stuff out. But it seems like it's going to be quite efficient once we get all the information inputted to it.
All right.
Hey, thank you.
Anybody else got any questions for Tam? Okay, Tam, I have one. Wondering about, because I know that you do a lot of basically you have students through the summer working on the farm, and traditionally doing, like, customer service has been a huge mandate of yours. Like, it's super important. But I'm wondering, with how do you pull people to work with you in the summer in a rural environment? Like, what's your sort of pitch, I guess, to get people working on the farm that are in the region and local?
This has been an ongoing learning for us, and it keeps changing. What we find amazingly this season is that the youth are really interested in working on a farm and learning about where their food comes from. And it, above and beyond all else, we have so many applications. We found an online platform that is called Good Food Works. And if we post a position on there, we'll get a lot of applications from people from all over the province to come and work with us. We also work a lot with the local high schools, and there is now a new youth internship program called YIP, and it's an actual apprenticeship program where the students can sign up and come and learn from you for the season. And it's 3 different levels. You can sign up for, I think, a 360-hour, a 480-hour, or a 1,200-hour program. And there is financial assistance to the province of Alberta for 3 positions on your farms. I happen to be a landscape journeyman, and so we were able to access students through the RAP program, and they are actually enrolled in the apprenticeship program and are interning as landscape horticulturalists. So they're learning about food production from that perspective. We also just usually post on Indeed. Interestingly enough, that has been a great platform for us. And we'll get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications to come work, even if it's a part-time job for the pumpkin season.
Excellent. And then, so can you also describe a little bit on top of that? Because I know that you've also fostered so many people to get into the business that have worked for you. So I know you have some sort of, but not philosophy, but part of your training program and everything is, it seems that you spark entrepreneurship with the people that work with you.
Yeah, that's been an interesting, fun outcome and unexpected, but I often will tell them that we live in entrepreneurial heaven in Alberta because there's nothing out there and there's lots of opportunity. And I encourage them to be very independent minded while they're working with us. And that is actually one of my questions on the interview sheet is, have you ever done anything entrepreneurial? And I have found that people who say yes or that are interested are always self-starters and engaged and interested and learning. And that's what I'm looking for in terms of employees. There are a few great success stories. There's been several new businesses come about because people started working with me when they were youth. and now have their own greenhouse and garden operations or their own market gardens. And it's so rewarding to see that that passion that I have for entrepreneurial spirit gets passed along. And we're very supportive, very mentorship minded, and often we'll have lots of conversations with them about how to get their businesses started. And oftentimes they now come to me because they want to have a business of their own, and that's part of the learning. We have a new program called Sustainable Life Apprenticing, where the students will come and actually learn from us as to how to start their own business and how to run a vegetable operation. And we have them for a season, and then they move on to their next jobs. And oftentimes it's another market garden, and their goal is to have their own farm someday. And especially through community-supported agriculture, it's really a possibility for them. As youngsters, there's so many capital start costs in starting a large farm that the small farming has become maybe the only way that they're able to get into agriculture. And they can rent land, and they can already have a market of people who've paid up front, so it helps cash flow them. And it's a great opportunity for people entrepreneurially minded to support their local communities by building a local food shed. So we're very pleased with that program.
Excellent. And I hope I potentially, with your answer to that, sparked a few more questions from either Mark with Business Link or Carolyn with the province with labor and immigration.
Yeah, I can have a couple of questions. One in particular, and it's kind of broad, so I just whatever kind of comes to mind would be helpful, I'm sure. But like kind of thinking back to when you had started, you said it kind of began with the UPIC operation, I think, if I heard that correctly. Just at that stage, what kind of extra considerations did you feel came into play that wouldn't have been there if just sort of creating a farm or conventional type? Did it feel like there were obstacles that needed to overcome, or kind of challenges that caught you by surprise?
Sure. Yes. With a farm that you invite the public to come to, there's a few things that always need to be top of mind. One is how easy is your farm to find? And we find that rural roads really confuse urban people, and they don't understand our township and range road systems. So if you're more than 2 turns off of a highway, you're probably too far off the beaten path. And it will take a very special set of marketing to be able to ensure that people can find you. So proximity to market and less than 2 turns off a major highway is pretty important. From that perspective, once you get them on your farm, then of course you're designing your operations to have parking, to have places for people to use the washrooms and that sort of thing. So definitely a different mindset than just being a traditional farm. And of course, safety is a huge consideration, and you'll want to make sure that areas that you don't want the public to get to are fenced off. And people really respect fences, and really important on bodies of water, dugouts and that sort of thing, to make sure there's no access. And also to your farm equipment yards and your storage sheds, and the nooks and crannies that people find fascinating potentially, but shouldn't be on their own, taking a look around. And security, of course, is part of that. And so on our traditional farm, we actually do have 5 acres of UPIC strawberries, but it's at the front end of the farm, and people can access it 2 turns off the highway. And there's parking right there, and we have meters and greeters, so staffing is another consideration. And what we've done is focused our business to certain time frames, so we don't have to be open every day of the week. And by limiting picking to, for example, Wednesdays and Saturdays, we find that we are 100% busy in those time frames and sold out by the end of the day. And then because strawberries need a couple of days to ripen up before you can go back out and picking, it works really well. So we can just be open Wednesdays and Saturdays to the public, and then otherwise we shut the gate for that particular part of the operation. So just being creative in your solutions has sometimes and strategies has really served us well, and has allowed us to diversify into many different areas that we might not have if we had to do it in a different way.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tam.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
So Tam, I'm going to bring up something because also looking for insight from you about operating an agritourism business, and looking at what you see with local government and the opportunities to help an agritourism operation flourish, working with local government in a rural environment. What kind of insight can you provide us with Wheatland County? Just so you know, my boss, Matt Biscario, with Community and Development Services General Manager, is on the call, as well as Councillor Donna Bigger, who's also the chair for the Canadian Badlands. So,
Super.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to recognize that the consumer wants the things that they can find on a local farm. And it is such a great way to create employment in your region and make it so that farms can diversify. When I look at Sturgeon County at their census surveys, I see that the size of the farms is either really large or quite small. And the trend in agriculture right now is, larger and larger farms with fewer and fewer farmers and operators. And by enabling people to diversify on their small acreages is a way to keep jobs local, to keep local food production happening in your region, and to encourage the youth to come back to the farms. And I can't emphasize that enough, that if they have those opportunities and there aren't a lot of barriers in place for people to start a CSA program as an entry point, or to start a UPIC as an entry point, that this will be far more beneficial to your county or to your region than to only have large commercial operations. I think the average age of a farmer right now in the province of Alberta is 56, and the baby boomers, as it were, are heading toward retirement. And there is going to be the largest land shift ownership that we've seen in this century coming up pretty quick. And if we're forward thinking and passionate about making sure that we keep the youth in our communities, this is a way to do that. So having said that, what's also important to realize is that there are going to be some hiccups along the way. When people come out to the farms and they love it, there is more traffic. And, to make sure that those sorts of things are as part of the growth strategy and that they are positive and forward thinking is such an opportunity waiting. What we find as farms start to, and you've seen it in your area as we've seen it in ours, retire, each farm that gets purchased by the large farmer in the area. And, we also farm traditionally. We have 3,000 acres that we farm, which is not a large farm in any aspects of operations these days. But there are a number of farmers in our region that are farming 30,000 acres and more. And they're certainly absentee farmers on their lands, and they're not necessarily following the same stewardship that a small family farmer would. And they don't have kids that go to schools in the region, and they don't have so many of the other supports that a community that needs. So, once they go and those farms are gone, who supports your community churches, and who supports your community leagues, and who supports all of those sorts of things? So super important to make sure that those avenues are open for people to stay on the farm. There's so many different aspects of agritourism to consider. food is always at the root of all of travel, and people really want to experience their cultures through the foods. And they want to develop relationships with farmers directly to purchase their foods. And UPIC is and vegetable farming and those sorts of things are really easy entry point levels for people to get involved. We have worked a lot with our regional economic development boards. I sat on the Bonaccord Economic Development Committee and Sturgeon County just to learn myself a bit about what goes on in these committees, because as a farmer, you don't necessarily get exposed to those sorts of thinkings. And I found it really helpful to be working with our local authorities on how to go ahead with things. We currently have Sturgeon County calling for members for an agritourism and agribusiness task force. And so, of course, I've got my name on that board as well, hoping that I could have some value to offer in my experiences. And I would always look at other jurisdictions for best practice scenarios, looking at BC, looking at Ontario, just because their populations are so much higher. They've already been down those roads and explored all of those avenues. And it just makes so much sense to look at those particular land uses and how they've evolved theirs to know that we should do the same in Alberta and in our local regions. And I think that's a great resource. And BC is such a great place to take a look, because with their agricultural land reserves, they realized as they made it critical to preserve their farming industry, they had to also allow farmers the ability to make a living on their farms through non-traditional ways, and to allow them to value add their products and make wines and to make preserves and sell those things directly off the farm was an important part of that puzzle. But the rest of it was agritourism, and to allow people to come directly to the farm to support their farms with the value adding is how that all works together and makes for the perfect solution.
Excellent. Yes, familiar with ALR myself. So, but yeah, it's definitely it's for us same type of thing. It's the idea that that we have obviously we have our agritourism developing down here, and we have a lot of engagement with our farms that are looking at traditional farming to into agritourism and looking at that. So yeah, and it's interesting to well, and worked with you in the past on both of those boards up in Sturgeon and Bonaccord. But yeah, just hopefully that it continues to evolve and we get to those next layers of development and growth and diversification of our agriculture activities. But that's great. Just wondering, does anybody else have any questions for Tam? All right. Okay. So Tam, how can people reach you if are you open for helping out some people who might not have asked questions on this call?
Absolutely, sure. And one way is to send me an email. So you could just go to our website, which is prairiegardens.org, and just go through contact us, and I get all those emails. Or you can just look us up and give us a call. I'm quite happy to chat with you and help you out along the way.
Great. And yeah, thanks again, Tam. And as I mentioned, this we'll be putting this recording up on our WC Conversations page at infinitewc.ca/media. And we'll have it available for podcast as well on that same page. You can link to all of our podcast platforms. And yeah.
They were actually right out in front of the general store.
Sorry.
No worries. And again, thanks, Tam, for participating on this today. And it's always great to have a chat with you and see how things are going. And I know that you're going to come out of this pandemic great. Your farm and your ability to just think of new products, new things, and new ways to share stories. Yeah. again, thanks, and super appreciate you doing this today.
I totally appreciate your interest, and we're really excited because we're going to be signing up for Rendezvous Canada, which is happening in Edmonton virtually this May, and we are now inviting the world to Sturgeon County and to experience our farm. So wish us luck at that, and we'll let you know how that works out afterwards.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Tam, and great, and thanks everyone for participating today on the WC Conversations. And yes, great. Thanks again, Tam. And if you can stay on the line, I'll chat with you if you got a few minutes after this.
You bet. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tam.